When a Hollywood star walks into his own restaurant unnoticed, what he hears next changes everything forever. Vin Diesel was one of the biggest movie stars in the world. People knew him for playing strong and tough characters in action films, but in real life, he was also very quiet and private. He didn't like too much attention and often stayed away from the spotlight when he wasn't working on a movie. He liked to do things without people knowing. That's how he had lived most of his personal life. Some years ago, Vin had opened a restaurant. It wasn't advertised using his name. No posters. No signs with his face. Nothing flashy. He didn't want fans to come in just because they wanted to see a celebrity. The restaurant had a cozy and warm design, with a family-style menu, soft lighting, and friendly decorations. It was made for people who just wanted good food and a kind place to sit and eat. Wanted to create a space where the staff felt happy to work and the guests felt at home. But he didn't want people to know it was his place. He kept it all quiet. He used a different name for the business, hired a management team to run things, and let it grow on its own. He trusted his team. He thought they would take care of the place and the workers the way he would have. But over time, Vin began to wonder if everything was truly okay. He had heard some small things, nothing big. Just whispers that maybe the staff were being pushed too hard, or the management wasn't being fair. So one evening, without telling anyone, Vin decided to visit the restaurant himself. No camera crew, no announcement, just him. He wore a large hoodie, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. He looked like any other person walking down the street. That night, he wasn't Vin Diesel the star. He was just a man checking in on something important to him. It was around 8 p.m. when he reached the restaurant. The place was busy. People were eating, laughing, enjoying their meals. Waiters rushed between tables, chefs worked fast in the kitchen, and the manager walked around, checking everything. No one noticed Vin when he slipped in quietly through the side entrance. Didn't want anyone to recognize him, so he kept his head low and moved like a shadow. He slowly walked through the hallway near the kitchen, pretending to look at the paintings on the wall. But then something made him stop. He heard a sound very soft, almost lost in the noise of the busy kitchen and the talking customers. It wasn't a normal sound. It was someone crying, very quietly. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but then he heard it again, a sniffle. A short sob, and then silence. Vin's heart became heavy. He didn't know why, but he felt pulled toward the sound. It was coming from the break room. He looked around. No one was watching, so he stepped closer. He stood near the door, just listening. Inside, someone was crying. The voice was soft and full of sadness. He heard a young woman saying things to herself, whispering as if she just needed someone to listen. Even if no one was there. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "My feet hurt. I haven't eaten all day. And now the manager yelled at me again like I'm trash." Vin froze. He felt a wave of emotions hit him. Anger, guilt, sadness. This was his restaurant, and someone was feeling this way while working. There, he didn't move. He didn't speak. He just kept listening. "I just want my mom to get better," she said. "If I lose this job, I can't pay for her medicine. But I'm so tired, no one even cares." That broke something inside Vin. He had started this place to give people a chance, to help them, to give jobs where people felt respected. But this girl was crying in a break room, feeling hopeless, and no one even noticed. Vin took a small step closer and peeked through the slightly open door. The young woman sat on a bench, her head down, wiping her eyes with a paper napkin. She was wearing a server's uniform, and her apron was stained from a long day of work. Her hair was tied back in a bun, and her hands looked tired, like she'd been carrying heavy plates all day. Vin didn't know what to do. He didn't want to scare her by suddenly walking in. He also didn't want to leave her there alone. Thought about what kind of person he wanted to be, not the movie character who always saved the day with action, but the real man who made quiet choices that mattered. So he decided to wait. Just a moment longer, just to listen. Maybe she would say more. She sat there in silence for a few minutes. Then she stood up, wiped her eyes quickly, and took a deep breath. She looked at herself in a small mirror on the wall, forced a tired smile, and whispered, "Okay, Maria, you can do this."
Oh.
Just a few more hours. Then she walked out of the break room and disappeared into the dining area to keep working. Stood there, still frozen. Maria, that was her name. He repeated it in his mind. He'd never seen her before, but now he felt like he knew her. She was working so hard, dealing with pain and fear, but still pushing forward. And no one even knew what she was going through. He turned around and walked down the hallway toward the kitchen. He saw the manager giving orders loudly.
Ow.
Other workers looked stressed. The busboy dropped a tray and the manager rolled his eyes and shouted at him in front of customers. Vin's chest tightened again. This wasn't right. This wasn't the place he had dreamed of building. Something had gone wrong. He walked into a corner and leaned against the wall, thinking. Maybe it was his fault for staying away too long. Maybe trusting others to run everything without checking in was a mistake. But now that he was here, he was going to fix it. He decided not to leave. He would stay all night, quietly watching, learning what really went on here. Vin moved back toward the dining area and sat at a small table in the corner where no one could see his face clearly. He ordered a meal like a normal customer. While he waited, he kept his eyes open, saw Maria serving a group of customers, smiling politely even though her hands were shaking. He saw another server running from table to table, too busy to rest. He saw a cook slipping and almost falling because the kitchen floor was wet. No one had cleaned it properly. Everywhere he looked, he saw tired faces, people pushing through long shifts with very little support. Yet the customers were happy, laughing, enjoying their food because the staff were giving their all, hiding their pain behind polite smiles. Vin didn't eat much of his food. He was too focused, too disturbed by what he was seeing. He thought about Maria again. She had cried alone, cleaned her face, and walked right back to serve people. No one noticed. No one asked if she was okay. That wasn't just sad, it was a failure of leadership. He stayed at the restaurant until it began to close. One by one, customers left. Staff started cleaning up, stacking chairs, wiping tables. Maria was still working. She looked more tired than ever. Her feet dragged a little as she moved, but she kept going. When the lights dimmed and the doors were locked, Vin stood up and quietly walked back to the kitchen area. He knew it was time to stop being silent. He wasn't just a customer anymore. He was the owner. And it was time to show up not with fame, but with heart. That night had started like any other. But for Vin, it turned into something more. A moment of truth. A moment of choice. And what he saw, what he heard, what he felt, it was going to change everything. Not just for Maria, but for everyone in that restaurant. He walked toward the manager's office. The hoodie came off. The sunglasses came down. His face, serious and strong, was finally revealed. The people who had no idea he had been watching were about to learn the truth. And so a quiet visit turned into a powerful beginning. The story wasn't over. It had just begun. Vin Diesel stood in the hallway of his own restaurant, heart heavy after seeing Maria cry alone in the break room. She had wiped her tears and gone back to work like nothing happened. But for Vin, everything had changed. That one moment showed him that something was wrong behind the happy smiles and fancy dishes. He couldn't stop thinking about her words, how she was working double shifts, couldn't afford her mother's medicine, and still got scolded by her manager. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. He stayed hidden, not wanting anyone to know who he was. As the evening went on, he kept walking quietly through the different areas of the restaurant, watching and listening. He didn't say anything to the staff, just wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. Every corner he turned showed him more than he expected. In the kitchen, he saw one of the line cooks sweating heavily, clearly exhausted. The cook took short, rushed breaks and looked afraid every time the head chef raised his voice.
Another?
Cook, a young man, had a small burn on his hand but didn't stop working. He put a towel around it and kept going, afraid he'd get in trouble if he slowed down. Out in the dining area, Vin noticed that the waiters moved fast, almost too fast. They didn't rest for even a second. Some of them didn't even get a chance to drink water. He saw one waitress spill a drink and freeze in panic, looking at her manager like she expected to be yelled at. The manager rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. shaking his head in frustration. The waitress just cleaned the mess and walked away, her face red with embarrassment. Vin's eyes searched for Maria again. When he found her, she was standing at a table, smiling at a group of customers. Her voice was calm, and she patiently took their orders, even though her hands were trembling slightly. Her eyes looked tired, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. But still, she served them with kindness and grace. As she turned away from the table, she took a deep breath and whispered something to herself. Vin couldn't hear what she said, but he could guess it was one of those pep talks people give themselves when they're barely holding on. He followed her from a distance, still pretending to be just another customer. She went to the kitchen, picked up plates of food and carried them back out. Each time she passed him, he noticed how she forced her shoulders straight and tried to keep her smile steady. But he could also see the pain behind her eyes. She was clearly going through something difficult, and no one seemed to notice. No one offered to help or even asked if she was okay. He watched as a supervisor called her over and complained that one of the orders took too long. Maria apologized softly, even though it wasn't her fault. The kitchen had been backed up, but the manager didn't want to hear it. He turned and walked away, leaving Maria standing there ashamed. Vin's jaw tightened. This was his restaurant, and this was how the staff were being treated. He noticed something else too. The workers avoided eye contact with the managers. They whispered to each other only when they were sure no one was listening. There was fear in their movements, like they were always worried about making a mistake. The place looked good on the outside, but inside, it didn't feel like the kind of place Vin had imagined. It didn't feel kind. It didn't feel safe. He took out his phone and checked the schedule he had been sent by the management company a few weeks ago. It claimed the staff worked in fair shifts, with enough time for breaks. It claimed that employees were treated with care, but what he was seeing with his own eyes didn't match what he had been told. The paper said one thing, reality said something else. He started making mental notes. The waitstaff needed real breaks. The kitchen needed safety checks. The managers needed better training or replacement. Most importantly, people like Maria needed support. No one should be crying alone in a break room, afraid of losing their job for being human. Vin kept his hoodie up and continued moving around quietly. He walked past a table where a little boy dropped his fork, and Maria picked it up with a smile. Giving the child a new one, and even folding his napkin in a fun shape to cheer him up. The child laughed, and for a brief second, Maria looked like she forgot her pain. That moment made Vin feel both proud and sad. Proud that someone like her worked in his restaurant. Sad that someone so kind was suffering. After some time, he decided to speak to one of the supervisors, still hiding his identity. He approached a man in a white shirt with a name tag and asked in a deep but soft voice, "Hey, is the owner ever around?" The supervisor chuckled and said, "Nah, man. The guy behind this place never shows up. It's all handled by higher-ups. We just do the work. Why are you looking to complain or something?" Vin shook his head. "Just curious," he replied, then walked away slowly. That short conversation told him a lot. If the managers thought the owner didn't care, or never showed up, they probably felt like they could do whatever they wanted. There was no fear of being held accountable. That explained the behavior, the yelling, the pressure, the lack of kindness. Vin felt like he had been punched in the chest. He had started this place with good intentions, but staying away too long had given the wrong people too much power, and the ones who worked hardest, like Maria, were the ones who paid the price. He sat back down at his table and watched the team clean up as the night began to end. He saw Maria pick up a tray filled with dirty dishes, her arms shaking a little from how heavy it was. She walked slowly to the back, carefully balancing everything. Then stood up and followed from a distance. He saw her enter the dishwashing area, place the tray down, and lean on the counter for a second. She thought no one was watching. She rubbed her lower back and stretched her arms. Then she stood up straight, grabbed a towel, and started wiping dishes. Vin took a deep breath. He had seen enough. He'd come in hoping he'd find everything running smoothly, but what he found was pain, silence, and staff who were being pushed too far. The restaurant looked like a success from the outside, but inside was starting to crack. He remembered a conversation he had long ago with his mother, who told him, "It's not what people say in front of you that matters, it's what happens when you're not looking." Tonight, he saw what happened when no one thought the owner was watching. And now, he knew what he had to do. He walked outside for a few minutes to clear his head. The cool night air hit his face, and he looked up at the stars. It was quiet out. There he closed his eyes and thought about Maria's voice in the break room, so filled with sadness and fear. Then he opened his eyes and whispered to himself, "This ends tonight." He walked back in through the staff entrance and headed toward the manager's office. He knew they were going to be shocked when they saw who he really was. But he didn't care. They needed to know the truth. The real boss had been watching, and he wasn't happy. That moment in the break room had changed everything. It wasn't just about Maria anymore. It was about all of them. The cooks, the dishwashers, the servers, the ones no one clapped for. It's the ones who kept the place alive. With their hard work, Vin had always played heroes in movies, but now he had a chance to be one in real life, and he wasn't going to waste it. What started as a quiet visit had turned into something much bigger. And as he walked toward the office door, he knew that the next few minutes would change the restaurant forever. Vin Diesel stood just outside the office of his own restaurant, his heart beating slowly but firmly. So much had happened in just a few hours. He had walked in quietly, hoping to see a warm and happy place. But instead, he had found pain, pressure, and sadness hiding beneath the surface. The staff, especially Maria, were overworked and disrespected. The managers were careless and cold. All this had happened under his name, without him even knowing. Now, he couldn't ignore it. He had watched long enough. It was time to do something. But he didn't act right away. Instead of walking into the office and shouting at the managers or revealing who he was, Vin took a different path. Wanted to learn more? He believed that silence could teach him the truth. So he walked back into the main area and found a quiet spot near the kitchen. He leaned against a wall and listened. He saw Maria again, moving from one table to another. Her face was tired, but she smiled politely at every guest. She took orders, delivered drinks, and answered questions from customers with calm patience. Vin could see her hands shaking when she thought no one was watching, but still, she didn't stop. She kept going, step after step, smile after smile. She was clearly fighting a silent battle. Then he noticed something else. There was another server, an older man with gray streaks in his hair who walked with a limp. Every few minutes, he would sit down in the back for just a second, rubbing his leg. A young female manager snapped at him, saying, "No resting until we close. We're short-staffed. Keep moving." The man nodded without arguing and got back. Up. Vin watched in disbelief. He had never told his management team to treat people like machines. And yet, that's exactly what was happening. Vin moved closer to the kitchen again, where he overheard the head chef scolding a junior cook for chopping vegetables too slowly. The chef slammed a knife on the counter and shouted, "We're not here to babysit. Pick up the pace or find another job." The young cook looked down, clearly embarrassed. He didn't argue. He just nodded and kept working. Vin clenched his fists. Every minute revealed more pain, more silence, more fear. The workers were scared to speak up, scared to lose their jobs, scared to be human. And worst of all, nobody cared. Not the managers, not the supervisors. No one was offering help, just orders. He moved quietly again, watching each corner of the restaurant with fresh eyes. He realized this place had lost its soul. It looked nice. It was clean, busy, popular. But the people inside were broken. Energy felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for the night to end so they could finally rest. He had created this space hoping it would become something good. But what he saw now made him feel ashamed. How had it turned into this? As he walked back to the hallway near the manager's office, a sudden idea came into his mind. He thought about all the changes he needed to make. He didn't want to just fix what was broken. He wanted to rebuild the heart of this place. But before that, he had to make the people in charge see the truth. And the best way to do that was To show them that the real boss had been watching everything, he opened the office door slowly and stepped inside. Two managers were there, one sitting at a desk, checking numbers on a screen, and the other drinking coffee, talking about how tired they were of lazy staff. When they saw Vin, they didn't recognize him right away. He still wore his hoodie, though the cap was now gone. "Can we help you?" one of the managers asked, slightly annoyed. Vin stepped forward and slowly pulled down his hoodie. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "You already did," he said softly. The two managers stared at him, confused at first. Then, slowly, their eyes widened. They recognized him. Vin Diesel, the owner, the movie star. The man they had never expected to see in person. One of them stood up so fast, he nearly dropped his coffee. "Mr. Diesel, I didn't know you were coming." Vin raised his hand. "Exactly, you didn't know. That's the point." They both went silent. The room suddenly felt smaller, heavier. "I walked through this restaurant tonight like any normal customer," Vin continued. "No. One knew who I was. I saw everything, heard everything. The yelling, the silence, the pain." He looked directly at them, his voice still quiet but full of power. "Is this how you treat people when you think no one is watching?" The managers looked nervous. One of them tried to speak, but Vin didn't let him. "I saw a server crying. Alone in the break room. I saw another get yelled at for sitting down for a second because his leg was hurting. I saw a chef slam a knife on the table and scare a young cook. And you call the staff lazy?" The silence grew thicker. "I didn't build this place to become a factory of fear," Vin said. "This is supposed to be a family, a space where people feel respected, supported, safe. And instead, it's a place where people are breaking down." One manager finally spoke. "Sir, we were just under pressure, big night. Short on workers, pressure doesn't give you the right to destroy people," Vin interrupted. "Everyone here is under pressure. But that doesn't excuse cruelty." He turned toward the door, then paused. "I'm not going to shout or fire people right this second. But I will make changes, big ones, starting now." He left the office and walked into the dining room, where some staff were still cleaning up. A few looked confused to see him out in the open. One or two started whispering. Maria had just come out of the kitchen when she saw him. She froze, her eyes wide. She recognized him immediately. Vin raised his voice gently so everyone could hear. "Can I have your attention, please?" One by one, the servers, cooks, and kitchen helpers gathered. Around, some looked tired, others looked unsure. Maria stood in the back, her hands still holding a towel. "I'm Vin Diesel," he said. "I own this restaurant. Tonight I came in as a normal customer wearing a hoodie. I walked through every hallway, watched the kitchen, listened to how people were treated, and I want to say I'm sorry." The room went silent. "I thought I had built a place that respected people, a place of kindness. But I was wrong. I stayed away too long. And I let others hurt you in my name. That ends now." He turned and looked at Maria directly. "Maria," he said gently, "you don't know me, but I know you now. I saw your strength. Tonight, I saw your pain, and I saw you wipe your tears and keep going. You are the reason this place survives." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth. "You're not alone anymore," Vin continued. "From now on, things will be different." He promised immediate actions. More break time, better training for managers, monthly checks from outside staff advocates, anonymous reporting systems, medical support, fair pay reviews, and above all respect, he finished by saying no more silence, no more fear. This place will become what it was always meant to be, a family. The staff looked at each other, shocked, emotional, and hopeful. For the first time in a long time, they felt seen. It's not just as workers, but as people. Maria stepped forward slowly. She whispered, "Thank you." Vin smiled gently and said, "You don't need to thank me. You showed me what I had forgotten." And with that, the room once filled with pain and pressure felt lighter. A new beginning had just started. with a grand speech or a movie scene, but with truth, honesty, and the courage to listen. And that courage came from a quiet girl who cried in a break room, and a man who cared enough to stop and hear her. The whole restaurant was still in shock after Vin Diesel revealed his true identity. Some of the workers had never even seen him before, and many didn't believe he would ever come to the restaurant. But there he was, standing in front of all of them, not as a superstar or a celebrity, but as the owner who had just seen their pain and promised to change everything. Maria stood at the back of the group, still trying to understand what was happening. Just hours earlier, she had cried in the break room, thinking no one would ever care. She had thought her struggles didn't matter. But now the most unexpected person had listened, had seen her, and had called her out in front of everyone, not to embarrass her, but to honor her strength. Her heart was full, but she couldn't stop the tears that filled her eyes again this time. They weren't from sadness. They were from relief. After speaking to the team, Vin didn't disappear, or rush off like most famous people would. He stayed. He walked around the restaurant, talking to workers one by one, asked about their shifts, their problems, and their dreams. Some of the staff were nervous to speak, but when they saw how serious and kind Vin was, they opened up. For the first time, they felt like their voices mattered. Vin pulled aside one of the busboys, a young man named Eli. "How long have you been working here?" Vin asked. 6 months, Eli replied, surprised by the question. "Do you like it?" Eli hesitated. "I liked it in the beginning. Lately it's been hard. We're short-staffed. The managers don't listen. Sometimes we don't even get time to eat." Vin nodded slowly. "That's going to change. I promise you." He then moved to the kitchen and spoke to the junior cook who had been yelled at earlier. The young man looked nervous at first, thinking he might be in trouble. "You're doing a great job," Vin said. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. You deserve to work in a place where people support you." The cook looked stunned. No one had ever said that to him before. He smiled shyly and thanked Vin. Then Vin walked back to the office where the two managers were sitting quietly. Their faces were tense. They knew things would never be the same again. Vin looked at them and said, "You both have a choice. Either learn to lead with respect or step aside." The younger manager spoke quickly. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone, sir. We were just trying to keep things under control." "Control doesn't mean fear," Vin said calmly. "It means trust. And you've lost that. If you want to stay, you'll need to earn it back." He gave them time to think and left the room. That night, he sat down with the general manager of the restaurant's operations, who had just arrived after being called in. They sat at a corner table, long after the restaurant had closed. Vin didn't yell or blame. He simply told the truth. This restaurant is broken from the inside. It's not enough to serve good food if the people behind it are suffering. The general manager nodded and admitted he hadn't visited the place in months. "I thought everything was going fine." "That's the problem," Vin said. "We trusted systems. Systems can fail. We need real human eyes, real compassion." By the end of that meeting, Vin had a list of actions ready. First, he would arrange a professional HR team to come in and review all staff complaints. No more silence. Any worker who felt mistreated could speak without fear. Second, every worker would receive a wellness package. This included paid sick days, free mental health counseling, and emergency family support. Maria's situation had made it clear how badly that was needed. Third, managers would be retrained. Leadership wasn't about power. It was about service. Anyone who didn't follow that rule would be removed. Fourth, there would be anonymous monthly feedback from staff. Vin wanted the team to speak openly about what was working and what wasn't. And finally, every employee would get a surprise bonus that month, not just money, but a letter from Vin himself, thanking them for their hard work. That night before leaving, Vin found Maria again. She was in the break room, sitting quietly. Her apron was off, and her face was calm for the first time that evening. Vin sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Maria nodded. "I think so. I still can't believe all of this is happening." "You've changed everything," Vin said. Maria looked at him confused. "Me? You were honest? You were brave. You kept going when it hurt the most. Does that take strength? Maria smiled softly. I didn't think anyone saw me. I did, Vin said. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. This is my personal number. If you ever need help about anything, you call me. Okay. Maria took the card with trembling fingers. Thank you. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Vin replied. Just promise me you'll never think you're invisible again. Maria nodded. And in that moment, something inside her changed. She didn't feel like a forgotten server anymore. She felt like a person who mattered. The next morning, news had already begun to spread. Word of mouth traveled fast. Staff from other branches of the restaurant chain heard about what happened. Some were surprised, others were hopeful. And when they heard that Ving had spoken directly to a server about her struggles and made big promises, people started to believe that. Maybe this wasn't just a one-time thing. That same day, Vin called a meeting with the entire regional management team. Over 20 people sat in a large room, waiting. Many of them had only ever seen Vin in movies. They didn't expect him to care so deeply about the workers at one restaurant. But once he started speaking, they realized this wasn't about business. Anymore, it was about people. I'm not here to shame anyone, Ving said, but I am here to tell you that something has to change. We don't run restaurants. We run communities. We feed people. We employ people. We create the spaces where memories are made. We can't do that if the people in the kitchen endured. On the floor feel broken. Talked about Maria, about Eli, about the cook with the burned hand. He told their stories without using their full names, but he made sure everyone in that room understood how serious it was. If you think kindness is weakness, you don't belong here, Vin said. You think yelling is the same as leading? You're wrong. And if you think the people who clean the floors and serve the food are less important than the ones signing papers, then you need to leave. One by one, the managers lowered their heads. They knew he was right. By the end of the week, big changes had started. Maria received a full week off with pay to take care of her mother. Vin's team also arranged for her mother to receive medical help through a private clinic, all paid for. Other workers who had spoken up were thanked and supported, not punished. The atmosphere in the restaurant changed quickly. Where there was once fear, there was now respect. Managers started saying please and thank you. Breaks were enforced, not ignored. A basket with snacks and water was placed in the staff room. One worker said, "It's small, but it shows they care now." Vin kept visiting, sometimes announced, sometimes in secret. He didn't want people to treat him differently. He just wanted to keep his eyes open. Every time he came, he smiled at Maria and the others, asking how things were going, and he listened. Really listened. One night, as he was leaving the restaurant, a young dishwasher ran after him. He looked nervous but excited. "Mr. Diesel?" he called out. Ving turned. "Yeah, just wanted to say thank you. No one's ever done anything like this before. You made us feel human." Vin nodded, his eyes soft. "That's all I ever wanted." Got into his car and drove away, his heart full not of pride, but of peace, because he knew he had done the right thing, not just as a boss, just as a businessman, but as a person. That night, he didn't fall asleep thinking about movie scripts or cameras or fame. He fell asleep thinking about Maria's smile, about a busy restaurant full of hope, and about how sometimes the biggest difference you can make is simply stopping when you hear someone cry. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable night when Vin Diesel secretly walked into his own restaurant and discovered the truth about how his staff was being treated. The restaurant, once a place full of silent stress and quiet suffering, had started to feel completely different. The air inside was lighter. The faces of the workers were brighter. The fear in their eyes had slowly faded, replaced with hope. It didn't happen overnight, but change was clearly taking root, and it was real. Maria returned to work after her paid week off, during which her mother received the medical treatment she had desperately needed. That week had changed Maria's entire life. For the first time in years, she felt like the world wasn't ignoring her. Someone had seen her pain, understood it, and done something about it. Even now, it felt like a dream to her when she stepped back into the restaurant. The first thing she noticed was how different the energy was. The same walls, the same tables, the same uniforms, but everything felt new. Coworkers smiled genuinely at each other. Managers greeted the team with respect. The once-cold break room had new chairs, better lighting, a snack table, and even a soft board with uplifting messages pinned on it. One of them read, "Your effort is seen. Your work matters." As Maria walked in, her fellow staff clapped for her. It was a small gesture, but it made her heart swell with gratitude. She wasn't just a nameless server anymore. She was a symbol of the new beginning that had started in this place. Vin had kept his word. Everything he promised was happening. A new HR officer had been hired and was available every day for the staff. She sat in a small office near the back, always ready to listen. People started speaking up. They felt safe now. Managers had been retrained. The loud, angry supervisor who used to shout in the kitchen was gone. The general manager made it clear. Disrespect would no longer be tolerated. Those who couldn't lead with kindness were let go quietly. New supervisors were hired people who had worked their way up, understood the struggles of restaurant life, and believed in treating others with dignity. One day, Maria found a small envelope in her locker. Inside was a handwritten note from Vin. "Maria, thank you for being strong when it was hard. Thank you for reminding me why I started this in the first place. You helped wake up this entire place." Vin, tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were warm tears full of pride and healing. Vin didn't stop with just this one location. What he had seen in that one restaurant made him wonder what might be happening at the others, so he visited each branch one by one. Sometimes he came in disguise, just like he had done before. Other times he came openly, talking to workers, sitting in kitchens, listening to dishwashers and waitresses tell their stories. Just like at Maria's location, he made changes wherever they were needed. He created what he called the Heart Check program. Every month, workers were asked one simple question: "Do you feel seen?" If anyone answered no, someone from Vin's special team followed up. Quiet workers who were always overlooked began to speak up. Their stories mattered now. He also set up a fund called the Maria Fund in honor of the moment that started everything. This fund helped workers facing personal emergencies, whether it was a sick parent, rent problems, or school fees. The money came quietly, without paperwork or long waits. It was about trust and care. At Maria's restaurant, people now came to work early just to chat. They weren't afraid anymore. Laughter was back in the air. Music played softly in the kitchen while people prepped for the day. On weekends, the managers ordered pizza for the team after closing just to say thank you. Even customers began to notice something different. One of them told Maria, "You all just seemed happier." She smiled and replied, "We are." Afternoon, Vin came in again, this time not in secret. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, nothing fancy. No cameras followed him. He walked straight to the staff area, hugged a few familiar faces, and then sat down with Maria again. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course," Maria replied. "Do you think this place is finally what it was meant to be?" Maria looked around. A cook passed by and gave her a thumbs up. A busboy walked past, humming to himself. The break room door was open, and inside 2 servers were laughing over tea. "Yes," she said, "but only because someone cared enough to stop and listen." Vin smiled. "It was your voice that changed it all." Maria shook her head. "It was your heart that made it possible." Vin leaned back in his chair, feeling more peace than he had felt in years. It wasn't the movies or the fame that gave him that peace, it was this. It was knowing that he had fixed something that mattered, that he had helped heal a place that had been quietly breaking. Later that evening, a staff appreciation event was held inside the restaurant. No guests were allowed, only workers and their families. Tables were pushed aside, lights were dimmed, and music filled the space. People danced, laughed, and ate food prepared by the chefs themselves. There were no roles that night, just one big family celebrating how far they had come. Maria stood up during the event and was handed a microphone. She hesitated at first, But then, with a little smile from Vin, she began to speak. I used to believe that people like me didn't matter, she said. I thought I was just a background face, replaceable, invisible. But one night someone heard me crying, and instead of walking away, he listened. And because he listened, everything changed, not just for me, but for all of us. Everyone clapped. Some wiped away tears. Vin stepped forward and hugged her. You'll always be the heart of this place, he whispered. That moment, captured only in memory, not on a phone or a screen, was more powerful than any award show or red carpet event. The story didn't end there. It lived on in the hearts of every worker who found the courage to speak. It lived on in each smile, each shared laugh, each respectful word exchanged between team members. The restaurant became known not just for its food, but for its soul. Vin's decision to walk in quietly one night changed everything. He had gone in to check on a business, but he found something more important: people. People who needed to be heard. In one tearful voice in a small break room had been the spark that lit up an entire community years later. Maria would become the head supervisor of that same restaurant. She would train new workers, not just in how to take orders, but in how to treat each other with kindness. On her office wall, she hung a framed note that simply read, "Do you feel seen today?" And above the break room door, a new sign appeared. This place runs on heart. Yours matters. Vin kept visiting from time to time. He never made a big deal out of it. Sometimes he sat at a corner table and watched. Sometimes he rolled up his sleeves and helped in the kitchen. But every time he left, he did so with a quiet smile, knowing the place was in good hands. In the end, the story wasn't about a celebrity saving the day. It was about what happens when someone cares enough to pay attention, when someone powerful chooses to be kind, when one small moment of truth becomes the start of something beautiful. And all it took was hearing someone cry and choosing not to walk away.